Okay, good afternoon. Hey, I can hear me. Woohoo! All right, we got the diehards in here. It's 5:30, and you guys are still ready to hear about upgrades. So, hopefully, the treats we have in store for you will be good treats. Hopefully, you like the upgrade story and all the funness that comes with it. So, jumping right in, I guess. My name is Shane Young. I am a SharePoint MVP. I'm also a consultant, trainer, writer, author. I don't know. Anything you can do with SharePoint, I've probably done it. So, upgrade has actually been one of my favorite topics in the product. So, I've done that quite a few times. And up here I have.
I'm Joel Olison. I'm a technical product manager for SharePoint, and upgrade was one of my passions early on too. I care about the IT pro, and so I care about their experience, and so it's been my passion to make sure that that experience can be as good as possible. An upgrade early on was one of the things that people needed some hand-holding and people needed some feedback, Microsoft. So I was there. I've been beat up in rooms before, people on upgrade, so it's my intention to help you understand what is reality. It's not about putting icing on a cake here. We want to tell you what's reality, what's real. This isn't about marketing. This is about telling you what's going on with upgrade and what you can and can't do and some best practices and what's real.
Yep. Okay, so I guess just jumping right into the objectives here. Things we're going to kind of do is we're going to do pre-scan. We're going to talk about things that you need to be doing ahead of time to figure out what your environment entails and what it is you have to upgrade. So we're going to make sure we're talking about the pre-scan type of stuff, the ahead of time things. Then we're going to jump in and we're going to do the methods. There's three main methods we're going to discuss. We're going to talk about some other ones, but essentially we have the in-place, the gradual, and the content database migration methods. So we're going to go through those pretty heavily. Then once we've kind of walked through those, we're going to talk about some of the customizations you have to deal with, some of the issues that happen after you successfully do an upgrade, right? Things like, hey, my SharePoint portal server alerts are gone. What do I do? We're going to discuss issues like that. Then we're going to mention a couple of partner upgrade tools, a cool new upgrade tool that is a freebie even. Then we'll do summarize it all.
There was a white paper that was just finished in the last couple of weeks. You'd say, you mean an upgrade paper a year after release? You guys are still putting upgrade information out? Yeah. The deepest, best technical content for upgrade just barely went out. So what I'll do is I want to point you to that white paper, because if you're here, I highly recommend that you understand what's in that white paper. Not saying you have to read every word for word, not a bad idea, but there is great sections in that paper that you should understand what's in there. So if you're dealing with custom site definitions, or you're dealing with customized areas, or like you mentioned, alerts, or even just customized pages, there's some good information in there for kind of guiding you through some of those, creating upgrade mapping files, taking some of the technical details. It's a paper that's been published in MSDN, and one of the contributors up here was Shane. So, good stuff.
So the other thing that this doesn't mention here is instead of the standard, hey, let's demo a little piece of the product, I'm a very brave soul. And so what we're actually going to do is we're going to do a gradual upgrade from start to finish, interlaced through the conversation. So instead of just breaking and doing a demo, I'm going to start the demo, then Joel will jump to slides while some of the long-running operations happen, and then we'll kind of go back and forth. But if it all goes well, we should see a actual upgrade take place.
And you're here to see it.
Excuse me.
Good stuff.
So the first one here is we talk about our upgrade migration path. And so this is where we look at the fact that we have two different sets of upgrade targets, right? The first one we have is Microsoft Office SharePoint Server 2007, the premium product. Okay, but how do we get to that product? Well, that product is actually built of two different things. A combination of Content Management Server 2002, right, CMS, as you will. That was a product that was used to build public-facing internet websites, right? So that was how, if you wanted to publish your www site, you would use CMS 2002. And that was how you were creating, maintaining, and dealing with these type of sites. They took the feature set from that. They took the feature set from SharePoint Portal Server 2003, which is probably the reason most of you are here. They combined those, and that is what becomes Microsoft Office SharePoint Server 2007, MOS, if you will. Down at the bottom there, you can see that we also have just a direct upgrade, WSS2. So if you were using WSS2, or you still are, it just upgrades directly to Windows SharePoint Services 3. It's kind of the same experience we've had for a while now, so it's nothing too terribly new.
Now I expect a couple of questions. So one of them might be, what if I only have standard edition of SharePoint Server? Doesn't matter whether you're doing standard or enterprise, you can upgrade CMS or SharePoint Portal Server. The publishing features, the search features, the portal features, they're all in standard edition. There's new functionality in enterprise that becomes available with things like forms, Excel service, and so on. So that's really it's new functionality that's in enterprise. The other thing people might ask is, can I go from WSS 2.0 to MOS? Well, in the white papers and all the steps you'll see, it kind of guides you from WSS 2.0 to 3.0 to then you can install MOS on top of a WSS 3.0 environment. But something that hasn't necessarily been published but has been tested since is you can attach your WSS databases to a MOS environment. So that's acceptable as well.
So we'll jump into the database attach method here in a momento. All right, so before we jump in here to preparing for the upgrade, let's just jump right over to demo land. And if I did things correctly, woohoo. So this is our SPS 2003. This is a simple portal using 2003. I have lots of random customizations that we won't really get into, but you can see it has been branded. I've got some sites, or I'm sorry, areas. I forgot my terminology. You know, browse product lines, buy, here's all my different areas and sub areas. So it's a pretty typical SPS 2003 environment. If we get into the collaboration sites here, we can actually see, you know, we also have a lot of different WSS site collections living beneath the portal. So maybe if we go into a customer here, we'll go to AT&T. Oh, looks like AT&T doesn't have a site anymore. Just kidding. Bell South does. So we have Bell South and their sites. You know, so then we get into some WSS sites also. So what I'm really just trying to drive home here is we have a fully functional SPS 2003 environment. And so we're going to say, hey, we want to upgrade this. This is a single server install. Because it's a VPC, it's actually a domain controller. It's running SQL Server 2000 and SPS 2003 Service Pack 2 with WSS Service Pack 2 also. Pretty typical environment, I would say.
Yep.
So obviously the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to jump out here to my little support files, and I've got a folder. And the first thing that I'm going to have to do to this environment is what? I need to install .NET 2 and .NET 3 to get it up to the appropriate level of .NET to install MOS, right? So that's my first step. So all I was going to do here, I'm not going to make you watch me install .NET, but I just wanted you to see that I was actually, this is where we started. So I'm going to jump back over the slides. I'm going to run through the .NET installs off to the side as Joel walks you through some slides here. And as soon as I get back to the spot we're ready to start installing MOS, we'll switch back over to moi.
Great.
So now if I can just switch the button here. Nope. Hey, hey.
All right. So Shane, as he goes off on his installing all the prerequisites, in preparing for upgrade, one of those steps basically is making sure you get your environment so that it's ready to run. You may have new hardware, or you may be upgrading existing hardware. But either way, one of the first things you can do is make sure that you're backing up your environment before you start upgrade. But even way before that, how much of that data really needs to exist? Is there any cleanup processes? The more data you have, the longer it's going to take to upgrade. So if there's things you can do to promote people to clean up their content, if you can run scans and analyze your environment, delete sites that are unused, you know, getting rid of old junk, it's a lot better to clean up your house before you move it into your new house. The other things are, there's this thing called pre-scan. The sooner you can run pre-scan on your environment, the sooner you'll find out really what your environment looks like. You may think you really understand your environment, but until you run this pre-scan tool that will tell you how customized your environment is, what kind of orphans there are, or any kind of funny objects that may not necessarily help you when you're upgrading. The pre-scan prepares your environment for upgrade, but it also identifies things in your farm. So it's really a tool that's actually kind of saying, hey, your farm is healthy and ready to be upgraded or not. So as you run pre-scan, it'll actually say completed successfully, and otherwise it can fail. If you've got sites that are locked, they may be full at quota. There's things that can go on your farm that you really need to know about before you start your upgrade. Just by having a site that's at quota capacity can make your farm fail during upgrade. So it's very important you understand what your environment's like, how big are your disks, really kind of understanding your environment, how it's been customized, what web parts, what third parties have been installed. Is there any even cleanup that you can do on your web parts or cleanup you can do with third-party software that's been installed? As well, when you do identify some of these third-party software components, it's a great thing to do is talk to them about, hey, how should I treat your product as I upgrade my software? Just kind of one example, ChorusWorks. They have these nice little roll-up web parts in the previous version. Well, when you go to the new version, all those pages, they look like V2 sites. Well, they've actually built a tool for being able to help you migrate those customizations and re-inherit so that you can get the new look and feel. So it's just kind of one example of a third-party product. The other thing is you really need to think about what you're doing in kind of a service. How are we going to communicate this to the users? How are we going to build a plan and timelines and work with the business on how long it's going to be down? And the more detail you can get, the smarter you can be about understanding the methods for upgrade and making the right decisions, testing some upgrades, getting feedback, and so on. So I already mentioned, don't forget to do backups. Failures and uneducation is kind of the biggest part that's going to hang you up when you're doing upgrades. The more educated you can be, the smoother upgrade will be. The more times you can run upgrade and understand your environment, the more successful you're going to be. So just kind of running through this list, it's more just for reference. Requires Service Pack 2 of SharePoint. Service Pack 3 has come out now, and there's a couple of fixes in there related to upgrades, so I highly recommend the latest Service Pack be installed, Service Pack 3. Now, there is SP Site Manager. You'd never want to run this on a V3 environment, or if you're in the middle of a gradual upgrade, never run this tool. It can actually damage your V3 environment because it's thinking that it's working with V2 sites. So, although it's recommended here, never run SP Site Manager on a V3 environment or an environment that has some sites that are upgraded with V3. But, like it does say, run pre-scan as often as necessary, which really means as often as you can.
Pre-scan, pre-scan, pre-scan.
Run it early, run it often, and run it right before you start, because it really will tell you, is your environment ready to be upgraded even right now? So, are you ready? No, you're not.
Nope.
SharePoint Server has a pre-scan, and there's WSS pre-scan. Now, it's the same executable, but the parameters are different. There's actually a pre-scan upgrade config.xml that has in it it basically identifies some of the areas in Portal Server. So it's very what'll happen if you run pre-scan without that parameter. It'll think that everything's WSS, and it'll think your areas are customized, that they're different site definitions. So it's very important and very critical that you run pre-scan with this switch so that it knows to mark them as out-of-the-box site definitions. If you're running WSS, it's pre-scan/all. This is good, just kind of a good reference. And what it'll give you is a pre-scan log that you can then open up and get information. If you don't grab that file, it's in a temp directory, so it's going to get cleaned up. So it is important that you go to that temp directory and copy them elsewhere so you can keep track of those logs. And in a sense, this is exactly what it looks like. There's an example here of the failure in the upgrade pre-scan tool. It points you to where the log is. You just open up that log, and what you really want to see is the success. And so when we get up to that point, he'll show you running pre-scan. He'll show you what the log looks like. So we'll come back to that. So what is pre-scan going to find? Well, what it's going to find is sites based on custom templates, meaning not out-of-the-box templates. It will find, even if you save a site as a template, that's a template. So it's going to find things that are not using the out-of-the-box site definitions. It's also going to find custom site definitions or sites based on those, unghosted pages, which means customized pages, orphaned objects, whether they're sites, webs, libraries, or lists, custom web parts, any DLLs that have been installed, any client-side web parts that actually won't identify. It's talking more about any custom DLLs and anything that needs a language pack. Your upgrade will actually fail if you don't have the language packs necessary. If you've installed a number of language packs, it's very critical when you're doing your gradual upgrade. You have those ready to go for your new environment. So here's kind of an example of the log, and we can look at this one in just a second. You can kind of see, so they identified some unghosted pages, meaning these are pages that have been customized by some tool. Could be SharePoint Design or Front Page.
Front Page. Exactly,
Front Page 2003. Or even if you had something with Notepad, it will still be identified as an unghosted page. It basically means it's a customized page that is not the one that's sitting on the file system. It's not the same as the one in site definition.
So that page has actually been stored directly in the database as a physical object now.
Yeah. And in a sense, if you kind of think about it from a document perspective, it's a branch. We've created our own branch. We've made it look like the way we want it to look like. And the product group doesn't necessarily know, do we keep the branch or do we go back up the tree and inherit back to the way it is? So they actually decided we need to give the control back to the people who are running the upgrade. They know better whether it's okay to re-ghost, meaning kind of uncustomize them and re-inherit the site definition, those files that are on disk. Is everybody really confused about that? Does that make sense? Customizations and site definitions and all these terms. So here's some errors in this where it's saying this following site has not been scanned, and then gives you the GUID and URL of the site. Why might that happen, Shane?
Those have got to be orphans in my book, or the sites could be over quota, but
the sites could be over quota. They could be locked.
They could be locked. Don't have access to them with the account I'm running as.
Maybe the database that they're in is offline.
Lots of fun reasons. Orphans, though, usually.
Orphans, those do look like orphans, but they could be locked or over quota. So here's an example of the pre-scan, kind of what you see in the UI. It'll say, finished without failure, number of sites skipped. So if you continuously run, you run pre-scan, you fix some problems, you rerun pre-scan. What it does is there is a little bit that gets flipped that basically it'll set the site so that it knows that it's ready to be upgraded. Numbers of sites scanned, the broken sites, those are the ones you really need to fix. The webs and the broken ones, and those with the custom templates and pages and so on, and ghosted pages.
What's the difference between sites and webs here?
So in this context, sites means site collections, webs means sites or
subsites,
subwebs. Lots of fun terms to use.
Keeps it a challenge.
Oh yeah, that's why you get paid the big bucks.
Woohoo.
Issues found with pre-scan. Now, if you haven't installed SP2, that's definitely one that would be identified. The update list schema, that's the same thing as basically saying, hey, you didn't install SP2. If your virtual server isn't in a ready state, you need to get running against the upgrade of the virtual server. So these probably aren't necessarily things that will happen in this day and age, but it is important that you were running at least Service Pack 2, if not Service Pack 3, which we already mentioned. But as well, there's actually this blog that Bill Bear did, Microsoft IT. Any error they ran into in their upgrades, he identified them in his blog. So that's basically the MIT experience is on the pre-scan errors they found, and then what they did to resolve them. So we've kind of mentioned a few of them here, but he's kind of got a pretty good verbose list.
Yeah, the virtual server not in a ready state, that happens almost every time on environments. Why? Because some of the web applications, some of the sites listed in IIS don't have SharePoint on them. So it's going to say, hey, I see this web application, but it's not in a ready state. Not a big deal. You just need to know
what that means. That's
Yep.
a good point. So there's really three big upgrades, three big methods. Now there's all sorts of variations of those, and there's even methods that aren't in these core ones, but these are the real three core upgrade methods. The in-place upgrade is Shane's favorite.
next, finish. It just works, right?
No, actually, we both talk about, if you read our blogs, you'd say that in-place upgrade is one of the worst things you can do. Anybody in here asks me, should I run in-place upgrade? I'm not going to say yes. In-place upgrade is it's designed for an ideal environment. It's a good checkbox, but there's so many things that can go wrong. We already talked about what if somebody locked the site. You just ran pre-scan, and they added a bunch of files right in between when you ran pre-scan and when you started upgrade. Somebody happened to go over quota, and now upgrade fails. Don't run pre-scan. Just don't.
Don't run in place. Run pre-scan. Pre-scan's your friend in place.
Pre-scan's cool. I'm talking upgrade. In-place upgrade is one of those ones where it's really for the ideal environment, which doesn't exist. The gradual upgrade, this is one where it puts you in control. It allows you to do side-by-side comparisons. It allows you to show your people, hey, this is what your upgraded site looks like, and can automatically redirect users to the upgraded site. It allows you to flip-flop back and forth, and we're going to show you this one. The complexities around gradual upgrade, just being honest with you, there's some namespace funniness that it's important that you understand. We're talking about two different web applications with some of the sites sending you here, and then after they get upgraded, it sends you here, and then when we revert, we send you back here. So it's very important you kind of understand two different web applications, two different namespaces. We're doing some redirection, in a sense, that when you get sent here, we're redirecting you over here. The redirection is not a perfect redirection. It's a client-side 302 redirect. It's not a pure redirect. It's not going to give the right response to all clients. Office applications, they're not necessarily 100% with that redirect. So, does that make sense? If you click the link in Word, it's going to open the browser, so that's okay. You might be thinking it's worse than it is, but if you go, it's kind of hard to explain.
Well, there's a slide in a couple that will actually help you with that.
Oh, good.
So maybe that'll
even better.
help you get through this challenge.
The content database migration is one where you're attaching your databases to an upgraded, the V3 farm. It could be the WSS 3.0 or the MOS farm. If you're building new hardware and you don't have a lot of customizations, that's one way of being able to kind of attach your databases. It upgrades those. If you do have customizations or web parts, it's important you identify what those are so you have them already in place on the new environment. All your language packs are installed. In a sense, from a development perspective, these two environments have the same components, and then when you attach your databases, it's upgrading those sites and then attaching them. It's the fastest of all three, but the nicest one to your users is probably the side-by-side.
That's what we're going to demo, if my laptop ever catches up. It's spinning its little wheels.
Yeah. So there's a lot of good references in here. You'll hear on the web that in-place upgrade is fast and simple. It's fast, simple, and most likely to fail. I don't even say it's best for small environments, because if you have small drives, the transaction logs can actually still fill up your drives. So it is important that you really understand what's going on, and you're not in the driver's seat when you're running in-place upgrade. You're down when it's doing its upgrade.
All right, on that lovely note, my laptop is finally ready for us, so let's jump over here for a second. We'll come back. Okay, so my prerequisites are now installed on the server, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my buddy setup. And I'm going to plug in my key that is not in my folder anymore. Ay caramba. I have a product key memorized, right, Mr. Olson?
You're right. It's on my blog.
It's on my blog too. Good place for it. All right, hang on.
Back?
Yeah, you jump over there. I lost my key.
Let's come back.
Sorry about that. I lost my key.
Okay. So in the reference here, Shane even says he works with a lot of small customers. He's kind of the small guy, IT pro. And he even says it doesn't offer the amount of flexibility that you really need. SharePoint is one of those apps where it's not about getting upgrade done fast. It's about working through and working with your customers and your clients and making sure that it's the experience that they want. It's not about brute force, let's get this done and get to the new version. It's about, hey, let's look at your data, let's look at your sites, and have this be a good experience for you. It's amazing how many calls he gets where someone tried to run in-place upgrade, and now they're ready to hand it over to a consultant.
Because it breaks everything. Woohoo!
Now, in a sense, for the database attach method, what's going on is you take your V3 DB or your V2 DB and you're attaching it to a V3 farm. And in a sense, if you look at what happens on the file system and you look at your databases, both farms have config DBs. That's what defines a farm, is the config database. In V2, they had the search DB, the prof DB, and the site DB, right? Those search and prof DBs, they turn into the SSP DB and the search DB. Your content DBs, or the site DBs, are now content DBs. And it doesn't necessarily say the word content all the time, but you can identify them. You can name them whatever you want. It does have underscore content, but they also have nice long GUIDs that are very friendly as well.
Hopefully you're naming those yourself when you create them.
Yes, that's definitely a best practice, is to give them nice, friendly names. But you do want to kind of identify them as your content databases, since that's where your files are. Go ahead.
Good. All right. Sorry about that. There's my key. Okay, so now that I have my key here, I'm just going to say, hey, let's continue. I have read all that a million times. Okay, so here's where we come to our first decision point. What do we want to do? You can see it's going to give us three options. We can either perform a gradual, we can perform an automated in-place upgrade that would be so fabulous, not.
Let me give you one quick stat. Guess what the #1 calls are at product support still to this day?
Failed in-place upgrades.
Yeah. So you do want to offer yourself flexibility. Don't just do brute force upgrades.
So the third one here is I could install MOS side by side on the server and not do any type of upgrade. So I could have a box with just MOS and SPS side by side, completely separate from each other. But for what we want to do, we want to do a gradual. So we're going to say yes here. Server type is automatically complete, so I don't have to worry about here. So now I can just jump right down here. I'm going to say install now. And we're going to let this install run, and we're going to switch back over to Senor Joel.
Now, gradual upgrade is one of Shane's favorites, so I am going to let him talk to up gradual.
So gradual upgrade, this is by far my favorite method. I've probably done literally 150 different upgrades between different student environments, test environments. I actually wrote a whole training class around upgrades, so I've done a lot of client installs also. But with the gradual upgrade process, it's a beautiful thing because we're going to run this stuff side by side, right? So I've got my 2003 server. Boom, I'm going to slap 2007 on there. I'm going to run them side by side with each other. While they're running side by side, I can then essentially, as we're going to see in here, we're going to upgrade one site collection at a time, and we can move between those site collections. So maybe I want to have, maybe I've got two different environments. I've got portal.company.com and I've got team.company.com. Two separate environments, two separate web applications on the same server. I can run through, I'm going to do a gradual upgrade, and I can say, all right, let's upgrade Portal, but let's leave team alone. No problem. So now I've gotten a 2003 showing up here, 2007 showing up here, on the same box. I can take it a step further. Maybe, remember we had the Bell South site? Maybe I want to just upgrade the Bell South site. So I want to upgrade my Portal and Bell South, but the AT&T site that's hiding, we want to not upgrade that one. We can actually have a split environment where the same web application, some of the site collections have been upgraded, some of them have not.
Gradual really puts you in control. One of the things you'll notice as well when you're running gradual upgrade is you can decide which sites you want to upgrade. So let's say you've ran your pre-scan, you're ready to do your upgrade, and you decide, you know what, I'm going to do all the sites that I found no customizations on. I'm going to do them first and just be done with those ones. Get them running the new technology, get them taking advantage of the recycle bin so that I can start getting less support calls. They can start using new functionality in the breadcrumbs, the navigation, and they can start moving on to the new product. Then I can identify the last sites, the ones with the customizations, then I can spend my time with them. I can get my experience with how upgrade works with those first people who are easy and vanilla, and then I'll spend my time with my last 10% or my last 5% and do a little bit of hand-holding and say, okay, we're going to do this now. Here's the new one. Any problems here? Oh, man, my site looks crazy. All right, let's roll it back. It allows you to handhold with a handful of them. But after you've kind of identified, let's do the bulk of them, let's get them done over the weekend or whatever. We're going to push through those, and we're going to identify the ones that we want to spend time with. And we can spend time with those guys and keep going back and forth if we need to, or identify things and spend time where it's most important.
And that's the beautiful thing he said there, is after we upgrade a site collection, right after we upgrade Bell South, maybe they're not happy with it. Maybe they haven't had 2007 training yet, or it looks funny. It's just not working for them. Hey, we can click one simple button and they're right back to 2003. Can't do that with in-place, can't do that with content migration, but with gradual, we can move back and forth between the two versions at will.
What you'll notice as well, when we started doing upgrades, in the beginning it was the ops team, really. It wasn't necessarily the business users. The business users would say, oh, this data view, or oh, this web part, or oh, this list has this thing or that problem. They would hurry and revert it back, and then over the weekend they would try and figure out whatever I was identified. By the end, they were fixing stuff on the fly. They wouldn't even have to talk to the customers. They knew, oh, it's a view, oh, it's a web part, oh, it's an image that got shifted over. They would be able to address those things, and then when the customer would say them, they wouldn't even have to revert anymore. They were now educated and trained on this stuff so that they could quickly move through and much better identify how to address the needs of the customers.
So and you hit on a key best practice there, though they originally were going with, and that is after I upgrade one of these site collections, I want to have the business unit scheduled to be, available to verify that it looks good, right? I don't know what the HR site collection is supposed to look like. I don't know if it's messed up, if they had some custom functionality. I just know, hey, it upgraded successfully, right? Oh, check it off my box. I want them to verify and say, hey, this site's pristine, or no, this site has problems, let's revert back.
Now, when I was talking about kind of pushing a bunch of these vanilla sites through, you'll notice that there's actually some features here where you can say, we've been talking about customized sites or unghosted sites. You can decide, do I revert all of those unghosted sites back to the site definition as they're upgraded, meaning they're all going to inherit the new functionality and the new look and feel? Well, maybe for all the ones that are uncustomized, I don't have an issue with those. But there may be a handful of the ones that I've looked at and I don't see anything wrong with them. I want to push those guys into the new site definitions. But there's a small handful that I really need to work with those businesses because they hired consultants to do look and feel. They spent $5,000 on their homepage. We don't want to just blow it away. We want to work with them to see if they want to keep what that fancy stuff that they built or whether they want to rebuild it. So there is an option, even in gradual upgrade, where we can say we want to either push them hard into the new site definitions, or we want to allow them to keep their unghosted, customized pages.
All right, and it looks like our demo is ready for us again, if you want to jump back over here for a second. Okay, so what we can see here is it's finished. It says, hey, I'm done. Now, it's a little confusing because what does it do? It has a checkbox here that it says I'm going to go ahead and run Configuration Wizard. What have we not done yet? Anybody know? We have not ran pre-scan yet. So if we were actually to let the Configuration Wizard launch here and run through it, it's actually going to fail. And people are going to freak out, right? The sky is falling. Let's just go ahead and fail. So we're going to say next. Yes, you can restart services. I don't have any other SharePoint servers, so okay. Question here. Do I want to connect to an existing server farm, or do I want to create a new server farm?
Do you know what that's going to do? If you say, no, I want a new server farm, that's when you get a new config DB. Otherwise, you're just going to connect to a config DB. That's really all it's asking there.
And unfortunately, we don't have a 2007 config DB right now, so we want to have to say, no, I want to create a new server farm. So I'm going to say next, and the server name is W2K3. It's using SharePoint config. I'm okay with that. Username, ABC, SP service, okay.
Fancy.
I know, my password is the word password. Security first. We're going to say next. Now here I could change, I could say I want to run on a set port number if I wanted to. So if I want my environment run on 555 or 777, or I can just let it do its own. And I can choose which authentication method I want to use. I'd say for the upgrade, I'm going to stay on NTLM. I don't want to mess with Kerberos.
Don't do
errors.
Kerberos right now.
So I'm going to say next.
Deal with that later.
And now it's okay. There's all the information. Are you ready to go? So I'm like, yes, I'm doing an upgrade. Everything is running perfectly.
Checking whether the pre-scan upgrade tool has been run.
Boom. Failed to initialize. The error message is there. Why do I point this out? Why do I get this error in here? Because I get so many phone calls about this error message. What does it mean? And what it means is we never ran pre-scan. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate over here to my 12 Hive. So since we're all familiar with 2003, remember everything was kept in C program files, common files, Microsoft shared, web server extensions in 60. In this version, everything's kept in 12. I don't know why, it just is. I do know why. It's not important though. So I'm going to go from 12 to the bin, and then we're going to run our little buddy pre-scan /all.
For a WSS environment.
Oh, that's right, I have a portal environment, so I probably should do pre-scan /c, pre-upgrade scan config.xml.
Beautiful.
I don't believe I got that right. I'm shocked. So now it's going to process. This is, of course, going to, take longer on huge environments. So my environment's pretty small. So it's going to snap right up. Hopefully at the bottom it's going to say configuration successful. If not, Joel will have to do a dance for us or something.
You don't need to be afraid of pre-scan. Some people are afraid of pre-scan. There's nothing to be afraid of. You can back up before you run pre-scan, but you really don't need to be afraid of it.
It's not going to hurt anything, so he's trying.
I've never heard of anybody ever having a crash because of running pre-scan.
And the nice thing is, I had to install MOS here to get pre-scan to figure out what was going on my server. You can actually download it directly from Microsoft.com and run it against your 2003 without even going through the steps we went through this point.
Yeah, you can download that XML as well. So the pre-upgrade scan.xml is also available.
All right, so we want administrator, local settings. Now, I don't know why they decided to hide it in such an obscure place from me. Local settings, temp. And then there should be a nice little report down here, pre-upgrade scan config.
There's a little trick. You can type %, temp %.
I'm not smart enough to know little tricks. All right. So you can see that it is got all kinds of unscrubbed lists. That's never good. The following site has not been scanned. Freehand has encountered sites or lists that were not updated because they cannot be accessed.
Go to the KB.
Uh-oh. Go to the KB for the answer. So you can see that what it's telling me here in my little logs is that, hey, I had some errors. Let's check the other log file. So this is actually the one from my portal. And you can see here that it looks like everything's looking pretty good. Oh, we get down here, we've got still looking good. Oh, there's some unghosted pages, right?
Yeah, you see the one where it says it's turning off quota and locks on a certain site.
Very nice of them.
Then it restored the locks.
All right, so the fact that it actually said it was successful tells us, hey, we can keep going with our upgrade now. We can see, what do we got? 11 sites, 85 subwebs, 2 of them using custom templates, and 3 unghosted pages. All right. So we'll close up on that. So now what I want to do is I want to rerun Configuration Wizard. So start all programs, Office Server, Config Wizard. And now I'm just going to go back through and plug in the same settings we just talked about. So next, W2K3, ... Next. Next. All right, let's make sure we get to step 2. If we get to step 2, we'll jump back to slides.
Now this PS config utility that he's running here, it kind of looks like it's an installer, but you actually run this after service pack updates. You run this after installing language packs. Whenever you have any big problems on your farm, running this tool will actually kind of adjust things and fix it back up. So it's actually a good troubleshooting step to run PS config, that utility there you saw. It's not just for installation.
The other thing with Configuration Wizard, if you have a small or medium farm, medium or large farm, Configuration Wizard is how you move central admin from one server to the next server. So you can actually go into Configuration Wizard and say, hey, decommission this server as central admin, promote this server as central admin. So
it's a great point. Good best practice.
All right.
So yeah, and in our slides, this basically is kind of giving us a nice little demo of the gradual upgrade process. We have our WSS 2.0 environment, a web app with a config DB and a content DB. It's kind of identifying that here.
It says press the button.
Now we're saying, oh, we're going to install on the same farm. We have, what's interesting here is there's no other instance of being able to leverage a server and being more than one farm. But here we actually have 2 farms on the same server. Kind of scary, kind of cool. We have our V3 environment, our WSS 3.0 environment. This could be MOS. But we have our content and config DB, okay? All on the same server, all in same SQL. We're identifying that, right?
Yeah, press that button while you're talking.
That's right, yeah. So in a sense, what it's showing here is that what's going to happen is we're going to do the redirect. You notice now, we used to have WSS, and we just created that new web app. Now we've created our new web app, we've given it a host header of WSS. That was the name of our old site, what our production sites are. Now we've renamed our old web app to be WSS old. And in a sense, when you're upgrading, those upgrades are going into a temp DB, and in a sense, those changes are going into the new content DB. It's a nice little, pretty picture there.
Fancy animation. Which one of us did that?
All right, so now that site has been upgraded, and now when people request it, everything works. All those links are now upgraded. So when we were talking about, we're going to upgrade all the vanilla sites, all the sites that are uncustomized, all the ones that look good, that are easy. None of their links are broken. None of their links are different. As they're upgraded, now they're working with the same paths that they were before. But the people that are customized, the people we need to do a little bit more hand-holding, they can still type in the same URL, but this content's being served from a different web application. The content's being redirected at the old path, at this path we called old. Now, there's a best practice that Shane uses that I think is pretty good, where he actually gives that, instead of giving a different host name that could be confusing, he just gives it a port number. So that way the host name itself doesn't change, but people know there's something interesting here going on, that when it's upgraded, it's going to be the exact same path. Before it's upgraded, and during this transition period, it's going to be served from that port.
So we're going to demo all that funness, but this kind of just walks you through it. So currently we have portal.company.com, right? That's how my users go every day to get to their information. Well, during the gradual upgrade process, what's going to happen is the 2007 server, MOS, if you will take over portal.company.com. So all requests for that, it is now serving up.
Anybody that's upgraded is going to get the new, nice production URL. There's some incentive to be upgraded now as well.
So, but when you hit that URL, if the site that you hit, so if you were to type in portal.company.com/BellSouth, and we haven't upgraded BellSouth yet, when you hit that, it is actually going to give you a 302 redirect, which is going to take you and push you over to, in my environment, portal.company.com:8080, a separate web application that is still hosting a 2003. So that's how it's handling the whole balance, is there's two separate web apps, and the 2007 web application is smart enough to redirect you to the 2003 if that site has not been upgraded yet. We also kind of warn you that some applications don't understand the 302 redirect. Your browsers do.
There's been a couple of customers that they don't like the 302 redirects, and so they've actually built their own server responses where it's a server-side redirect rather than the client-side redirect. So I forget if that's been shared on Codeplex or not, but
I haven't seen it.
It's definitely something somebody could build if they wanted to, if they didn't like our 302s that they're getting. And like it's saying, basically the V2 content is still available via that temp URL, which is a very important thing to understand. Even though the site's been upgraded, there's a way to compare. If they type in the production URL, the one we always want people to keep referring to, typing in the real URL, they'll be using the site where they're supposed to. But for comparison reasons, there is a way at getting at the old one, so that we can look and see if it's truly upgraded. Now what you should do, and the good best practice here, is either lock the old site, set it read-only in some way. Now one of the ways you could do this is upgrading everything in a single content database and then setting the database read-only. Or you can use the read-only locks in the product. But that's a lot of read-only locks.
That is a lot of work.
And in a sense, these are basically the steps you've kind of seen Shane run through. The pre stuff, getting the environment ready, URL redirect. It's important to understand what you're going to be doing there. What are you going to do for your transition period? What are you going to do for your old namespace? You're going to do ports? You're going to call it _old or something like that? What IT did that they learned from was they called it V2. And end users didn't realize that meant old. They thought that meant, oh, this is the new environment.
Version 1 of software, version 2 of software, so they thought it was the new stuff.
They thought it was the new stuff. So they started bookmarking and sending links to the V2. This was before IT. Like I said, you learn as you go. Well, they started realizing there were people going to 2 different environments. There was all sorts of problems because things weren't read-only on the old stuff. Trying to sync stuff up, that was a pain. Not easy, not hard. Much easier to just merging, not a good environment. Don't try and do merging. We already did the config wizard. You already installed the binaries. You ran the config wizard. If you need language packs, do those. Upgrade def, site def, feature files. Any kind of customizations you've done really need to be redeployed.
Yep, so what it's kind of saying here is that the next step after this configuration wizard finishes is we need to deploy any custom components that we might
Yep.
have to deal with.
And in a sense, the one to really identify here is if you had brought in a consulting organization or your dev team got really fancy and they built some site definitions, some custom site definitions. If your upgrade definitions don't exist, then when you do your upgrade, it's going to freak out and it's going to fail. If you have the upgrade definition, it'll know how to map the stuff on V2 to V3. That's what that upgrade definition is about. It's about identifying these are the set of assets, this is what the template does, this is how it works. And in any solution packages, well, in a sense, any web part packages, that's where your third parties, if you were able to yank them off V2, now you can put them in place so that when those sites are upgraded. But I do recommend that you work with those third parties so that you understand how best to get them back in to support your search solutions or your workflows or whatever.
Are you ready to jump back over here?
Yep.
Luckily, we are still doing good here. We're configuration successful. So now we should be able to hit finish here on our configuration wizard. And SharePoint is kind enough to fire open central administration for us. Of course, now it's got to do all the compiling of the page the first time, the old cold SharePoint site in the morning.
Maybe while you're doing that, I could just look at this real quick.
Yep, go ahead.
In your upgrade, the upgrade log is going to tell you what was successful and what wasn't.
Oh, you missed the button.
I missed it. Go. You may need to rerun upgrade if you ran into any problems, but they will be identified in the upgrade log file, which is in that temp directory as well. And then you can either do your content upgrade, you can even do gradual upgrade through STS-ADM, or you can use the UI that Shane showed. And then reviewing your upgraded content, recustomizing sites, resetting site definition. There's ways to do that through SharePoint Designer, or you can do it right through the UI in site settings. And if you don't like it, you can revert it, and we'll see some of that. And rather than driving through this, I'm going to let Shane show that in his demo. But there is the command line reference even where you can just -o, upgrade, revert the particular URL.
All right.
So I'll let him show this rather than talking to it.
Okay, so now the central admin has shown back up. What we can do now is the first thing we need to do is go into the operations tab, and we need to tell it that the service is on the server. So in 2003, we went into manage components, and that was how we enabled the different pieces, and that's how we built out farms, right? We'd say this server had the web, this server had the index. In this version, what we need to do is we need to maintain the services on the server. So in this example, you can see that I have several different services running here that are not available to, or have not been started, even though they're required. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump down here and I'm going to find those to the Excel calculation services because this is Moss Enterprise. I'm going to hit start. So that service is started. And then I'm going to go into my Windows SharePoint Services search. And I'm going to hit start on that little buddy. And he's actually going to prompt me for some information. And just for simplicity of demo, I'm going to use the same account for everything. ABC. Everybody can watch how badly I type. Scroll down here, it's asking what database server it should use. Well, we want to use the default. What database name, we'll take that. And now what we can do is we can control how often this little job runs. This is a very oddity in the product, but this little service, all it really does is indexes the help system file. I don't think you want that running every 5 minutes. Probably don't want it running, period, but it has to run in the farm. So what I usually do is set it to run at some odd hour. It runs for about 2 minutes and then it goes away for the day. But we're going to hit start. And it's processing. It should be creating my database now, assigning the service accounts, all of that fun stuff. And the reason my little computer is running so slow, in case anyone's wondering, is Vista decided to install an update while we were doing the upgrade. the auto update service decided that now was a great time to run an update. Dramatic pause, dramatic pause.
Yeah, you can subscribe to those Vista things, by the way.
Yeah. I love Vista. All right, well, I don't know. This should only take 30 seconds. So Joel, tell us a funny joke while this runs.
You put me on the spot.
I know. All right, well, we'll switch. Come on. I know as soon as I switch, there it is. I touched the button and it switched. Okay, so now all my services are activated. So now my farm is ready to have the gradual upgrade started. While we're on the screen, I'll point out a very common confusion point. People are like, hey, I have a single server, so I need to make sure I get that checked. Or I have just an Excel server. All of these little radio buttons are doing is they are helpers. They are just changing what you're seeing down here, what services show up. So don't feel like you have to get it stuck on just Excel if it's just an Excel service. It's always going to default to web server for medium server farm when you first come here. So that all looks good. So now we're going to jump back to my operations tab. I'm going to scroll down here at the bottom. Under upgrade migration, there is a site content upgrade status.
Notice that finalize upgrade? Don't click that.
Stay away from that for a while.
Yeah, you don't want to do that too early.
Okay, so this is now identifying all my SharePoint web applications on the server. I just have one here, so it's going to say, hey, begin upgrade. Now, some people worry that's actually going to do something. All that's going to do is let us set up the connections to begin the process. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to upgrade any of your sites. It's just establishing the connections. Right? So right now, if I was to go back to portal.abc.local, as soon as I get a CPU cycle that's free. We're going to see the 2003 site is still here.
Looks like I need more jokes, huh?
It's fine, yeah. I'm telling you, little Mr. Computer, he's having a bad day.
What do Donald Trump and SharePoint have in common?
See, you tell this one wrong.
Okay, you tell it.
No, it's too late. You messed it up.
Does anybody know what Donald Trump and SharePoint have in common? They both have cache. Okay, that was all right.
Not bad. All right, well, while that's open, I want to show you guys that, but it's not opening quickly. All right, so here the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our URL redirection. Okay, remember we just talked about we could do WSS old or we could do portal : a number. So what I prefer, what I consider my best practice, is I will actually run it on an alternate port number, so 8080. But I need to put in my same host header, so portal.abc.local. So there I'm just specifying what is that redirection URL I want users to end up at if the site hasn't been upgraded yet. I can then come down here, I'm going to create an application pool. So this is going to be upgrade app pool. I'm going to specify an account. I bet you can all guess what account I'm using and what that fancy password is. Scroll down here. Some people are confused by this reset IIS. This command here only really takes precedent if you have multiple web front ends and you want SharePoint to propagate the web apps for you. It has to recycle IIS after it propagates those. So if you want that all to happen automatically, you need to click this. In a single server environment like we're in, we can just ignore that setting altogether. Then we roll down here and we can pick, do we want to manually specify databases names or do we want automatic? I'm all about automatic, what the heck. Now I'm going to create some databases, so this will be portal, SSP, DB, and portal, SSP, search DB. So I'm just giving it the shared service provider database names. And, all right, so that's all ready to go. Before I click OK there, I just want to show you that, though it didn't refresh very nicely, the portal is still over here on this current web app. So I wanted, there you go. So you can see we're still at portal abc.local. It's still 2003 at this moment. As soon as we hit OK and this finishes, that will no longer be the case.
You've got more time for jokes, huh?
Nope, I got time for you to jump back. Let's do a couple slides here.
Okay, I think you're right.
So I'll hit this button and this button, I believe. Hey, hey.
All right, so basically he's going to show us this in the UI in just a minute. But in a sense, you have the ability to revert in gradual upgrade. And what it does is it resets the redirect to point back to our V2, our SPS 2003 web application. And in a sense, what you want to do is you can do it via the UI, you can do it through a command line. And once complete, you then have the ability to re-upgrade it when you're ready. The other thing you can do is you could use SharePoint Designer to merge those changes. In a sense, open up your new environment, grab whatever assets like pictures and data views or whatever you had done on your previous environment, just redo it with SharePoint Designer with the new site definition. That's kind of one of those things you can do when you're trying to decide what you're trying to do. This is one example of fixing up the sites to be like they were.
And SharePoint Designer, just in case anyone hasn't seen it, that is just the next version of Front Page, essentially. So Front Page 2003 upgrades to SharePoint
In a
Designer.
sense, there's a fork. You got Expressions that's kind of focused on web design. Then you got SharePoint Designer that's really focused on a nice design client for building workflows and building views and stuff for SharePoint. And today that fork isn't too big, but just wait till the next time around. Gradualize, we talked about finalize upgrade in the UI. What this does is this is going to remove your redirect. It's going to remove the 2003 bits. And you still can upgrade by using database attach, but you just don't have your UI in central admin for you doing your side-by-side upgrades. So what it does is it kind of cleans up the UI and removes the binaries.
Takes away all the redirects that we're just now establishing. So.
Yep. It's something you do. I recommend not doing this right after you're done. I recommend waiting for a while. You know, really deciding, okay, nobody's been talking about upgrade for 6 months. Okay, now let's talk about whether we want to finalize our upgrade.
Yep.
It really works best. In gradual upgrade, we kind of talked about this being a really good thing working for most environments where you can really do the hand-holding. Just kind of mentioning that it's not necessarily, you don't want to do these redirects for long periods of time. If you can avoid it, you can say, this web app, we're going to do it all. But what you can do is you can kind of look at, for different portals, you can decide what is the best upgrade method for these namespaces. You don't want to keep these redirects around long term because you're trying to maintain, how do I keep these read-only? And you don't want people sending people to the old paths. So it's basically, if you communicate it properly, you can get through it if you make sure you keep those old things that no one's no longer using in read-only.
Now our next method. Go ahead.
The database attach upgrade, it's the fastest. It's the best option for thousands of, it didn't change.
That's a neat trick.
Did it work?
Yep.
All right. So the database attach upgrade, it is the fastest. In fact, just kind of share some experiences. Microsoft IT found that gradual upgrade, it was really great for when they're working manually with customers and kind of helping them with their customized environments. But when they were trying to upgrade 100,000 site collections, it was way too much in the UI because it was really kind of designed for maybe 10 sites at a time or 100 sites at a time. When you got 100,000 of them, it's a little bit slow for you, especially if you're trying to just upgrade the bulk of them. You already know you're not going to really have problems with. The database attach allows you to just attach the database, get it all upgraded, and then move on. The cons on this side is some of those customization scenarios. If you're working with custom site definitions, and you're trying to recreate those on the new environment, it's very, very messy. It's very complicated. If you're working with out-of-the-box environments or very few customizations, the database attach really makes things a lot faster, especially if you have new hardware. This is the method that really helps you accelerate what you're trying to do.
Yeah, one of the challenges with this method though is you have to get in there and you reset up search on your own. You reset up audience profiles on your own. You have to kind of go in and manually redo a lot of steps like that. They're not hard steps. It's just something you have to go in and do.
It's important you kind of understand the glue around all this stuff. You're basically reconfiguring all that stuff.
Yes, but the content itself, it's coming like that.
Yeah. So just kind of understanding what that kind of looks like. Here we've got two different farms, a 2003 farm, a 2007 farm. We've got separate config DBs, separate physical hardware, and maybe we have a column in SQL, for example. What we're going to do is we're going to attach our content DB over to the new farm. We could take a copy of it. We don't want to take our original one. We want to take a copy of it. We can back it up or detach it, make a copy, then reattach it. Attach a new one. So we haven't really affected our old environment here, but we now have that content DB upgraded, attached, and now it's all clean on the new farm.
And it's literally just as soon as you attach that database, SharePoint says, oh, that's a version 2 database. Let me upgrade it.
You noticed in the notes it does still require pre-scan be run on the database.
Which you have to do on your 2003
farm.
environment.
That's right. The other thing you see here is it looks like it's using a common SQL server. You can use different SQL servers as well. You don't necessarily have to use the same one. But if you're short on hardware and you're just trying to get this to happen, what I've even heard of is people, even with medium farms, they'll leave one of the front ends in the 2003 farm, break off one of the servers, flatten it, build new MOS on it, and then use it as a single server that's a farm, upgrade their content. So it really depends on the size of your environment. But you can kind of do this with existing hardware. And then after you're done upgrading, you then rebuild that other server and attach it into the new farm. So there's going to be that period of time where you're not necessarily using all your load balancing, but it gives you the flexibility of using database attach, going fast, separate farms, and getting the kind of similar side-by-side experience, but more at a web application level. And we've kind of already talked through a lot of these. You still need to do your prerequisites. You're going to pre-configure it, configure the web applications for each of your new web apps, and reapply any of the configuration, especially any upgrade definitions or site definitions, so that those things can be applied during the upgrade process. And then any web parts or customizations.
All right, let's see if we can flip over here. Come on now. Yeah, Joel pressed too many buttons up here, it's all broken. Okay, so all that happened here was that processing window we just left came through. And so now what you're going to see is it is actually showing me all of my different site collections that are available. And so now we can actually choose which of these site collections we'd like to upgrade. So I can actually come in here and say, hey, I just want to upgrade the root, which is my portal, and this site right now. Or maybe I want to upgrade all of them right now. I could hit the little selecty box here. Woohoo! I have that choice. The only decision that you're forced right now is the first site collection that you upgrade has to be the root site collection. So you have to upgrade your portal on the first pass.
Because it's a portal, what is everything going to live in, right?
So we're going to upgrade that one. Remember earlier Joel was talking about our ghosted files? Over here in upgrade settings, we can actually say, hey, I don't want to, or how do I want to deal with ghosted pages? And so it says reset all template pages during upgrade. If I select this box, all my pages that have been unghosted will be re-ghosted on the fly during the upgrade.
Now let me tell you a term that's used internally that we don't usually tell customers. The reason why I want to tell it is because I think it's going to influence your decision a little bit on this. There's this term called Frankensites. And it's kind of a funny term, that's why I'm telling you too. But if you're keeping these custom unghosted pages, now you don't know where in the site there's an unghosted page that somebody randomly customized. Now you've got this weird navigation experience where you may not see the recycle bin because they've touched that page. Or you're on the home page and you're not necessarily seeing the new navigation, you're wondering why. when you're doing upgrade, really people want to see and be able to take advantage of the new functionality. If you're kind of getting this freakish experience of every other page doesn't have the new master page and doesn't have the look and feel, it kind of feels like a freakish experience.
Freakish experience. All right. So
but I'm not saying you have to do that. But it's a good thing to get the new site definitions. Then you can manage branding. Then you can manage all these things. But you're in control. You can make these decisions, and that's a checkbox for you. You can push to force it. If you're doing gradual, my recommendation is the more you can push them into the new site definitions. In the long term, it's really going to be a good thing.
All right, so here I've selected all of them. I'm just going to hit Upgrade Sites. And it's essentially going to, at this point, stop and say, hey, this is how much data you have. So I have 295 megs. Actually, I'm going to hit Cancel. And I'm not going to upgrade the big old fat volume document site. So I'm going to undo that. So now I'm just going to upgrade everything but that one site, just in the name of speed. So now I've only got 15 megs of content.
Nice.
I'm going to hit Upgrade Sites. So here you're going to see, this is your last chance to check yourself, right? If this had said you're about to upgrade 2 terabytes of data, I might have selected too many boxes, right? So we're actually going to let this run for a couple minutes. We're going to run through a couple of slides. We're way almost out of time, so.
Yeah, we're going to go fast all of a sudden. This is a lot of reference material anyway for you. So with Content DB migration, we pretty much talked a lot of this stuff. The part that we haven't necessarily mentioned is your search DBs and your SSP DBs, the search DBs and the prof DB, basically your shared services in the previous version. You can upgrade those databases as well if you want to. Not saying you have to, but if you want those services and some of the profiles and so on, you can do those. And basically what you're doing is you're running the STS-ADM command to say restore SSP. And this is kind of a side-by-side reference that kind of talks you through in place, gradual, and database attached with pros and cons along with scenarios. And if you don't like those 3 methods, here's 4 more. Maybe you just want to look at your content. You just want to upgrade your content. Hey, I've done a bunch of funny things with my environment. Really all I want is my data. I just want to upgrade my data into a clean new farm that doesn't have any other binaries on it. I want it to be very clean, and we're going to be good citizens now. We used to play around. Now we want to just use the product. We want to use it like a product. Sure, we want to use master pages and brand it and all that kind of good stuff, but all those freakish things we did, we don't want to do those anymore. Well, you can you do a content migration. That could either be by side, you're just using DAV to move your lists across. Maybe you're using a third-party product, and you're using copy and paste with Metalogix or Tsunami or Binary Tree or any of the other 10 partners that do migration and upgrade. There's the multi-threaded database attached. This is basically saying, I want to build mini farms and then upgrade a bunch of it at the same time and then merge them back together. The virtual in-place upgrade is basically using virtual server, and then if you don't like what you see, you just do your rollback. Makes it very nice and easy. And that's the only place I really recommend in-place upgrade is when you can roll it back. The rollback is what you really need in an upgrade environment. And then the other ones, migrate it, then upgrade it. So moving your data to a clean environment, then upgrading that farm. If you've got a lot of customizations, it's going to make your upgrade a lot more difficult. If you can move your stuff from a V3 or V2 to another V2 that's uncustomized, it's going to make your environment a lot quicker to be upgraded. More on that blog. And this is just what IT did. It's more of a reference of a build slide of you really can upgrade lots of data really fast if you really want to.
Lots of fancy arrows.
And this is another reference. What kind of customization did you do? What are some choices, along with some recommendations around custom handlers, custom site definitions, exclusions, inclusions, and so on.
Yep.
Search is one of the things to really kind of call out and understand. What's going on with search?
Your search indexes are empty when you finish the upgrade, right? So we need to make sure that we are doing a crawl or search is not going to work.
The content sources are even missing, so it's important to recreate content sources.
No, your content sources go if you do a gradual method.
In gradual, they stay.
In gradual, they stay. All the other methods, or the
Database attached, they're gone.
database attached, they're gone. Correct.
And SharePoint-specific issues, we talked about WSS alerts, they migrate, but portal alerts don't. So it's important to understand what the differences between them are and what that actually means. That means any search alerts, for example, but if you're talking about documents or lists, those ones are okay.
Uh-oh, the dreaded red light is on.
All right, we're out of time. But this is the end of the last session of the day.
Yeah. Hey, I don't want to go to dinner.
Bucket webs and areas. Bucket webs are gone. There's no longer bucket webs. They now become referential. They become sites themselves. Areas become sites. And you can use the site structure manager to move them around if you want to. So if you happen to want to move them, what's happened is those bucket webs, the C12 or the C6, C16, all those things, they're now flattened into a hierarchy. You're not going to see conflicts, but if you don't like the structure, it's something that you can address after the upgrade. And if people have created favorites to those bucket webs, there's built-in redirects where it'll send you to the new location. So it's another good thing that's important for you to understand. Other common issues.
The local administrator, right? So by default in 2003, if I was a local administrator, I could do anything I wanted in SharePoint. 2007, that is no longer true.
You can add yourself to the policy to give yourself full control. But local admins, it blocks out your domain administrators from just casually accessing all the sites on your SharePoint environment, for example. And we've added some new block file types in the block file type list. Incoming email is a new feature. There's obviously a ton of new features.
Ton.
The old way of doing email-enabled document libraries and the legacy web storage document libraries no longer supported. Other common issues, the Office Web Components. I think SharePoint, Shane's blog actually has a pretty good steps on how to get those web components on your 2007 environment. That pack is no longer
supported.
It's no longer supported. It's basically all those ActiveX controls. A lot of those things you can do with Excel services. You can do them. A lot of people use the web capture web part and the quotes, stock quotes, and news, and
yep.
Not as popular in Europe though, because they were all U.S. based. It was kind of embarrassing. Site directory. By default, it creates sites within the portal. So you actually have to go into site settings to say, I want new site collections if you're going to use the site directory for site creation.
We talked about all the fun stuff.
About site definitions.
Stuff. That's just showing it getting saved in the database. I was hoping, what we're trying to fill here is I wanted my upgrade to finish, but...
Yeah, we're basically at the end.
Yeah. So as you can see here, it's still at step 120 of 135, and 100%. See the little green light down here? It's running at 100% CPU. So
it's moving along.
Yeah. I guess.
One last thing. There are some. I mentioned the white paper. If you go to the SharePoint blog or my blog, there's a link to that upgrade customization white paper. It's on MSDN as well. If you go to MSDN. And it's the latest guidance on upgrade customizations. There was an upgrade toolkit that was built right around RTM for the application templates. That's basically a great way of creating your. If you build a bunch of sites on those application templates, it's a great way of getting your stuff up. But there's also some guidance in there around upgrade, so don't dismiss it if you're not just doing the application templates.
All right, we'll let them go. If anybody wants to stop up here and see this finish, you can come on up. We'll let the rest of you get out of here. I know you've got places to be. So sorry for running over. It happens sometimes, so thanks.
Yeah, thanks a lot.